All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're uncovering the hidden world of our most vital pollinators. We're looking at a topic that's this wild mix of ecology, food safety, and, well, our actual survival. It's an ecological investigation we're calling Save the Bees, Save Yourself. You probably think you have a good handle on bees, right? They buzz, they sting, they make honey. But what if I told you that the entire narrative we've built around these incredible insects is missing some massive, absolutely crucial pieces? Just look at this shockingly high number, 17 out of 22. Back in 2020, a major report by the Center for Science and Environment dropped a bombshell. They revealed that out of 22 top popular Indian brands selling honey, 17 were actually adulterating their product with sugar syrup. I mean, that is a massive food safety and quality control scandal sitting right on our grocery store shelves. It's a huge wake-up call that the commercial honey industry is pretty broken, and by extension, our relationship with the bees themselves is in deep trouble. So to figure out how we fix this massive mess, we've got to zoom way, way in. We need to look closely at the real architects of our ecosystem hard at work. See, they aren't just out there making a sweet treat for your morning toast. They are literally holding the entire agricultural web together. But our fundamental misunderstandings about them are causing immense harm to their habitats and ultimately to our own food supply. Let's move into our first section and meet the stingless urban bees, the tiny, tireless workers of Sundar Nursery. If you've never been, Sundar Nursery is this gorgeous 16th century Mughal garden right in the heart of Delhi, and it is absolutely buzzing with some highly unexpected microscopic residents. We're talking about 100 stingless bees fluttering around the wilderness areas there. They're tiny, often the size of a housefly or even a little gnat. They look absolutely nothing like the large, fuzzy, cartoonish bees we're so used to. And here's a mind-blowing fact. Some varieties of these tiny stingless bees are the exclusive pollinators for very specific valuable plants, like vanilla. No stingless bees, no vanilla. It completely shatters that scary, stinging stereotype we've all grown up with. And this brings us to a really elegant solution to our urban bee phobias. Rakesh Gupta, a beekeeper with the Golden Hive Foundation, puts it perfectly. Just give us a call and we'll come and shift them. For years, our default reaction to finding a beehive near our homes or office buildings has been to just smoke them out or destroy them because we're scared. But experts like Gupta are showing us there's a much better way. They'll just come out and safely relocate the hives to places where the bees can actually thrive. They're not trying to eradicate, they're actively working to coexist with these tiny miracle workers. But the way we treat bees in the wild? It's directly tied to a massive problem sitting right on your breakfast table. Section 2. The Great Honey Deception. What is actually in your jar? Okay, so to really get the honey market today, we have to look at two totally different worlds. On one hand, you've got mass market production. A lot of large commercial brands focus purely on quantity over quality. They're extracting unripe honey, honey that hasn't even had the time to develop its natural medicinal properties, and as we saw earlier, they're often pumping it full of sugar syrup. But contrast that with conservationist beekeepers, like the folks at Bee Basket. They focus on harvesting region-specific multifloral nectars, so depending on the exact season and local flowers, they produce these unique, thick honeys like jamun, coffee, or tulsi. It isn't some homogenized, sugary syrup, it's a rich, complex reflection of a living ecosystem. And here's the kicker. This mass-market exploitation is happening exactly when our agricultural sector is facing an existential threat. Which brings us to Section 3, India's rent-a-bee economy. The business of pollination. We are looking at a pretty terrifying reality for a food supply here. Across India, bee populations are dropping by an average of 20%. But then you look at specific regions like Odisha, boom, a staggering 80% decline. Just imagine losing 80% of the natural workforce responsible for making sure your crops actually grow. That's not a minor ecological hiccup, right? That is a full-blown agricultural emergency. So, how do farmers combat this? Well, they've turned to this totally fascinating rent-a-bee economy. Farmers are literally paying to rent bee boxes. It runs about 2,500 rupees per month. And the return on that investment? It is massive. For crops like lychee and apples, simply having these rented bees buzzing around guarantees a 20 to 35% boost in fruit yields. Farmers are realizing real quick that bees aren't just a cute byproduct of nature. They're a vital agricultural service you actually have to pay for when the free supply runs out. But honestly, renting bees won't mean a thing if they can't survive our rapidly warming planet. let's look at Section 4, Surviving the Climate Crisis, Bees versus Rising Temperatures. When temperatures cross that 38 to 39 degrees Celsius mark, the intense heat literally forces stingless bees into a state of hibernation just so they can survive. The heat is actively preventing them from flying out and doing their jobs. In fact, it gets so dangerously hot that some bee varieties are forced to abandon their typical habitats entirely and take over village wells in the summer, just because they desperately need the cooling, damp moisture down there to stay alive. But nature is incredibly resilient. Get this, they've developed a phenomenon known as natural air conditioning. When the heat gets unbearable, worker bees will literally stand right at the entrance of their hive and rapidly fan their tiny wings. They essentially become a living, breathing HVAC system, working together to lower the ambient temperature inside to protect their queen and the colony. It's a stunning feat of nature for sure, but honestly, they shouldn't have to work this hard just to survive the summer. Which leads us to Section 5, Debunking Big Bee Myths, Fact versus Fiction. If we actually want to help them survive this massive climate shift, we've got to stop misunderstanding them. Let's rapidly bust some myths here, because how we perceive them completely dictates how we treat them. First off, not all bees sting. Most aren't aggressive at all, and only react if completely threatened. Also, not all bees produce honey. We focus so much on honeybees that we totally ignore vast numbers of pollinating species that don't make a single drop. And lastly, not all of them even live in hives. Many are entirely solitary, living quietly on the ground, burrowing safely under dry leaves. If you're out there enthusiastically raking up every single dead leaf in your garden, you might be accidentally destroying an entire generation of solitary bees without even realizing it. All right, let's bring it all together. Section 6, Save Bees, Save Yourself. Here's why your actual plate depends on them. Just think about the everyday foods we rely on. Mangoes, lemons, gourds, beans, oilseeds. This isn't just about having a little bit of honey for your afternoon tea. Most of the nutrient-rich, essential foods sitting right there on your plate relies entirely on these specific insects doing their jobs as pollinating agents. If the bees disappear, the mangoes disappear, the lemons vanish. It literally is that simple, and it really is that dire. Thankfully, we're not just stuck in doom and gloom here. We actually have a clear, actionable roadmap to fix this. Number 1, leave some dry leaves on the ground for those solitary bees we just talked about. Let your garden be a little wild. Number 2, plant bee-friendly flora, things like sweet neem, babool, and wild creepers. People often dismiss these as useless weeds, but to bees, they're an absolute oasis. And finally, if you find a hive, call the experts for a safe relocation instead of an exterminator. Organizations like Bee Basket have already safely relocated around 19,000 hives. We can completely turn our urban parks and backyards into safe havens if we just put in the effort. So as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to ponder. Considering that human intelligence is nothing to scoff at, why are we letting our most vital food source disappear? We have the data, we have the brilliant ecological solutions, and we know exactly what's at stake for our own survival. The question now is, will we step up, change our daily habits, and actually protect the tiny, tireless workers that literally keep our world fed? Thanks so much for joining me on this one, and I'll see you in the next explainer.